and only Lord Mayor of Newcastle, Nuatali. Nuatali, you're a university graduate, you're a mother of 3.
Correct.
More famously, been the Lord Mayor of Newcastle for the last 5 years, I believe.
Also correct. Look at that research. You've done that backgrounding.
I've been everything, as much as I can. Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, all of it.
I guess that's on YouTube. Good, okay.
Yeah, there's a few things.
Oh, yeah, God, okay.
So please tell me, how did you get started in politics?
So I've been the Lord Mayor for 5 years, as you said, but prior to that, I was on council as a ward councillor for 6 years. So I just had so this is going back like almost 12 years. I just had my 3rd child, and I did have 3 under 5. And at that time, so 12 years ago, I was like pushing a pram around, 3 children sort of all stuffed into it, and using a lot of facilities around the city, obviously for families and young children. And in my mind, there was a significant gap in that provision of, park equipment, curb ramps and footpaths and, all that type of sort of smaller infrastructure. And I had been in the Labor Party for probably now I'm thinking like 23 years, something like that. So I'd already been sort of involved in politics, but sort of really much more around the periphery. And when you're younger in your 20s, it's really often about big national issues and that type of thing. So it was after having children, I got very interested in sort of the local issues. And I just decided, okay, well, I've just, having my 3rd child, I'm going to run for council. And the terms are 4 years. And by the time the 3rd child is almost ready to go to school, I'll just go back to my normal life. That was 100% the plan. 1 term, fix a few parks up and, advocate for, that sector of the community. So I was about 31 or 32 at the time, and there wasn't a lot of representation, firstly just by women in local government, and particularly not younger women in local government or particularly people with young children.
Yeah, right.
It's normally, still today, it's dominated by white males in their 50s, or the whole sector, not Newcastle particularly, well, not now. And so there was a real gap in sort of, a voice at that level. And I just sort of threw myself into it. And thought, I've got 4 years, I'll do what I can, fix all those sorts of things. Started on big projects like all of the revitalisation works and the new infrastructure at Blackbutt, because that was in my ward, in Ward 3. And I was a very passionate beach user growing up in Newcastle, and, worked on a very collaborative process to, deliver all of the coastal infrastructure upgrades, particularly the Bathers Way. Look, we couldn't, at one point, between where the surf club is and where the bars are, you couldn't even get like 2 prams to cross. Like there'd be a whole situation. Like I
remember that. I remember the footpaths were all asphalted and cracked. And
but you couldn't even get there's 2 big steep embankments. There's like situations where people are like lifting up. You just couldn't even walk past there. And I think, Pete, sometimes you forget what that infrastructure was like literally just 7 years ago. So getting involved heavily in that process and sort of delivering those changes.
So that really inspired you.
Yeah.
So when you were actually being a mum, going around Newcastle, because you're basically local. I don't think you were born here, but you went to school here, you went to university here.
Yeah.
So you live and breathe Newcastle.
Yeah.
And you literally just looked around the city and thought, this can be better. This can be improved.
Yeah. So my mother was from Newcastle, but I think when she had us, she was living in Sydney at the time, and then mum and dad moved maybe back here for a while, and then for a few different jobs. And then by the time I was 7, like we were always here with my grandparents, off and on, like Christmas. So all my Christmases have been spent in New Lambton, and so by the time I was 7, we were back here full time. And actually, and that's because I work in the travel industry.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
As much as I did a lot of research, I didn't find that out.
Yeah, gotcha.
No, well done. But I'd like to know, everyone's busy, right? Everyone's got a busy job or a busy lifestyle. But when I actually looked into what's required to be a Lord Mayor, you got to worry about the economy, the culture, the environment, the safety, national, international, domestic communications.
Yeah.
how do you do that job? How do you do it? Like, are there any rituals that you'd start the day with?
Yeah, so I've been to the gym this morning, and that was brutal. I was so off them.
Which one?
F45.
Oh, yeah.
Just down, not very far away from
Yep.
here. They made us do 5 minutes of burpees. I was filthy. And everyone was walking in for the next class, and I walked past everyone and I went, it's awful. And they're like, oh. Just scaring them as they went in there.
Is there anything else? So get primed for the day, get dopamine, get the serotonin with some exercise, so make better decisions. Is there anything else?
Yeah, so look, try and get some sleep, try and be in the moment. So, I was actually just talking to someone during the week about Buddhism for mothers. There's a book. I don't know if you've seen it. It was kind of big when my children were little, so a decade ago. And it was very much about there's lots of menial tasks we all have to do, but, enjoying them while you're doing them rather than just waiting for, getting them, trying to get them out of the way and then, not enjoying, those menial parts. Everyone has that in their life, whether it's washing up or cleaning and just trying to live in the moment. So very much if I'm with the children, not that they would say this, trying to enjoy my time and, make it worthwhile for all of us. And they've sort of grown up a little bit like that. It is randomly organised chaos. Yeah. It's school holidays at the moment, and my children are all, so my youngest is in year 6, so she's just finished primary school, and she was the baby when I first went into local government, which, to be fair, did work in those early years because it's only part-time, and I did take on another job towards, before I was a Lord Mayor, but it did work in that I was available a lot, off and on during the day when they were at home, and then a lot of meetings and commitments were in the evening. It's just now that it goes literally all day and all night that it gets sometimes a bit difficult to manage.
So, how do you switch off? I mean, there's
no off.
You're talking about meditation, like you got all these things up in the air, and your brain must be just going 100 miles an hour just to be able to to relax and to get away.
So I've got I just also focus on things that I can control. So there's lots of things out of everybody's control.
Yes. Yep.
And I find if people, it could be about work, which mine is quite full on, there's just no denying that, and just, a million different moving parts. And there's lots of things, surprisingly to everybody, that are outside my control. I have influence, and I can try and pull and push different levers to get an outcome for the community, but not everything is in my sphere of within my power. Sure. So I try and focus on, okay, well, what is under, I guess, legislation for us? What can we control? What can we influence? And how do those changes make a difference? And then, overlaying that, what sort of advocacy can we layer on top of that to get an outcome? And it has been a relatively successful and methodical process to, you just don't get everything you want all of the time with anything in life. And it's the same with government. And Newcastle had it's an amazing, passionate, radical left history. And, my parents are involved in that movement, and I have been, for many decades. But, sometimes when you're in the left of politics, you can see people, there's an option you can go, I'm going to not get an outcome and die in a ditch. But doing that, the flip side, the opportunity cost of that is that all these people and all of our communities also don't get any outcome at all. So it's bridging, a lot of my time has been bridging that progressive side of politics to go, okay, we're all over here, but we also need to make sure that for the sake of the city and moving forward and actually getting an outcome, whether it's creating jobs or protecting our heritage assets or making sure there's, private sector investment to actually stimulate our economy and actually have Newcastle realise its potential, there has to be somewhere where you can meet in the middle. And that's not always exceptionally popular, but I think if you have very good rationale of why those decisions have been made and, what has been in council's control or our control to make those decisions, you have a good story to tell.
I think you just summed up extremely well why I'd never, ever want your job.
No one does.
The intensity to that, like so
It's
many
intense.
people go to work and they're feeling a lot of pressure at whatever job. There could be a manager, could be a senior manager, anywhere. And they're not in the public eye all the time. Like they might have employees sort of tucked away at a desk or an office or have a branch on the other side of the country. You're like in the public all the time, continuously critiquing.
Yeah, there's particularly with
pressure.
Particularly social media these days. It's like just constant all day. Yeah, about just weird stuff. Some stuff is weird. Some stuff is, completely reasonable and normal. But some stuff is, deliberately political but, most of the time I can see it for what it is. Sometimes it's not very nice. And it's, you just have to, keep calm and carry on.
That's because I was saying doing my homework, there was a few videos that I found and it's thought, anyone would cave under this pressure, and you smile and you deliver it very well.
Oh, like silly memes that people have made of me.
Yeah, like it's showing a lot of you're being positive as an approach to find solutions, and I think that's a really good thing.
The thing is, Newcastle is different, and when I talk about what's in our control and like there's pieces of legislation and obviously things that we need to deliver as a council and for our community, but Newcastle, when I go back. Maybe 6 years, say. And prior to that, there was issues where everyone just went and sat in their corners and just argued with each other and really enjoyed that argument.
Yeah.
And in the meantime, what the projection to the outside world, if you're not from Newcastle and don't just love it, and because people go, I'm glad I've just moved here 2 years ago. I can't imagine what it would have been like a decade ago. And I'm like cruising around a decade ago going, this place is the best. The beach is amazing. And like I just thought it was the best thing since sliced bread. Oh, I'll tell you a funny story. I played a lot of basketball growing up. I was over in the US and we have to take gifts. So I'm 16 or something. And I'm like, I better get a gift to take over. So I think my mum helped me go down to Angus and Robertson and buy some books in the mall. And I got the Book of Newcastle. Because I just thought Newcastle was amazing, beaches and everything. And I'm looking at the book and it's like all these pictures of like heavy industry and like dirty stuff. And I'm like, well, I can't give people this. This is not Newcastle. And this is how old would I have been? I don't know. It was a long time ago, in the 90s. So in my mind, Newcastle has always been great. So the decision, going back to my first point, that I was very, very conscious of is, not everything's perfect and it never will be, but I'm not going to spend my time while I have the privilege of doing this role, which doesn't last forever, talking the city down. At every single opportunity, if the Lord Mayor of the city cannot be the 100% champion of this city, well, who's going to be?
Well, I've got some amazing questions around that.
Oh, really? Okay,
so
sure.
I'd love to talk to you, and the main reason why is about tourism and travel, because that's what I do.
Yes.
I'm a touring specialist around here.
Okay.
So I'd love to find your feedback exactly about the vision of Newcastle. Like, for example, I watched the Sydney Weekender with Mike Whitney. He recently came to Newcastle and he said, wow, look at all the coal ships. It's the biggest coal exporter in the world. Meanwhile, we've got a little girl from Sweden, I think, at the moment saying, how dare you pollute the planet? So a lot of people from Newcastle look at the coal industry like it's a tremendously great thing. And economically, it's huge. Like, it's such a powerful powerhouse, and that's fantastic. I've taken a few people private tours from the cruise ships, and I get a lot of feedback and say, what's your opinion on Newcastle? And they're like, yeah, we like it, but there's a lot of heavy industry here and coal here. And I find it really challenging to hear other people promote coal, especially from a tourism point of view, like it's a good thing. But how do we get away from that? How do we move away from the coal city or the steel city? The steelwork BHP is no longer there. People still have that reputation in Newcastle.
Yeah, you can't. You just can't. Like, you just have to own your history. That's what and there is not, like, our history goes back really tens of thousands of years.
Correct.
So it's about owning that history and telling that story. Now, coal will last our lifetimes easy, probably longer. Like, that's just a reality. A lot of the coal that's coming out of this region is being exported. And while there's that export demand, that's not going to stop. So you can't, that industry is not going to be shut down overnight, and nor can it be, because the flow-on effects of what that would do, particularly to the economy in the Hunter Valley, is phenomenal. Like, it's already difficult now for people working in and around that sector, but you need to have what is known as a just transition. And that the Upper Hunter economy is already, when I talk to the mayors of, those Hunter-based rural regional councils, they classify the economy up there as already in transition.
Sure.
Looking to diversify their economic base away from just being in particularly coal mining. And that is the snapshot of the time that we live in. 100% is going to see out our lifetimes. So the question really is, these are all things outside of all our control, really. That is going to last for a certain amount of time due to demand and no other option in terms of providing energy, to different places in the world. It's just with the rise of India and China, particularly India for us, in terms of coal, that demand exists and the licenses exist and they are legally allowed to do it. So that exists.
So that is part of the identity, but I believe different. I think it could be something, have a new identity as far as tourism goes. I mean, it's no doubt you turn up in Newcastle, you see the heavy industry, and it's something that, as I say, there's a lot of history and that totally makes sense. But how's this one for size? Would you call Newcastle? Well, actually, here's how you could better ask this question.
Yeah.
Cairns, for example, their slogan to the city is Gateway to the Great Barrier Reef. Their Facebook page has about 10 million followers.
It's beautiful city.
It is amazing, and it's internationally known. Adelaide, city of churches.
Yes. We've
got down the road at the entrance, they're the self-proclaimed Pelican capital of Australia, right? Because they're there at 3:30 every time they feed the pelicans.
Yeah, that's cute.
Noosa is the relaxation capital of Australia. What slogan could you put on Newcastle?
The fun capital of
the
Australia.
Fun capital.
Yeah. See, it's a fun place. I love it. Yeah.
It is. It is a fun capital.
I'm not sure. I'm open to suggestions. I'm a bit agnostic about names of things that people want to call everything. Yeah. People have better ideas than me.
Well, that's what I do for a living, I suppose. I've really thought about this.
Okay, good. Go.
So
Hit me with
it. At the moment, Newcastle Airport
is this where the UFC comes into this podcast? Are you going to choke me out?
I wouldn't even know how.
Really?
I don't have the tattoos to
match
the long
Okay,
sleeve.
That means I'll win.
Totally. But I fly out of Newcastle quite a lot.
Yep.
Because I used to do tours around Australia. And Newcastle Airport has been rated, I think, a couple of years in a row, the friendliest airport in Australia. It is. I turn up almost like 5-10 minutes before my plane departs. Always relaxed, always bored, never a problem. But could it be, instead of the gateway to the Great Barrier Reef being Cairns, could it be the gateway to the Hunter Valley?
Absolutely. And that has actually been discussed at the airport of what sort of signage is appropriate. Newcastle Airport, gateway to the Hunter Valley. 100% agree. Happy to do that. Well done. Was it supposed to be harder than that?
No, that's it.
It's a very reasonable.
It's been 2 weeks preparing that question.
Oh my god, it's exceptionally reasonable suggestion, and I feel like you would have a lot of support for that.
Oh, well, that's the feedback that I get, because when I used to tour Australia quite a lot, just for curiosity, people would ask me, "Where are you from?" I'd say Newcastle, and instantly they go coal, and I'm like, "It's not all about coal. It's got beaches, we've got the fun people, and it is. It's such a livable city for families. So, there's so many things to promote."
It is. And so your point about coal is important, that having an advanced tourism offering in terms of how to diversify and help with the transition of the economy is exceptionally important. But just sort of like facts and figures, in terms of like the comparisons with some of those cities you mentioned, like Cairns, when you look at the job mix and the employment mix and the standard of living and the average incomes, they're much lower than in Newcastle and the Hunter because of the types of jobs, the insecure employment. Yeah. So when you look at the job mix in the city of Newcastle, it's like in the city area, the transition has actually occurred from what was known as a steel city from the manufacture, obviously, and production of steel at BHP. Noting we still produce steel here. There's still steel production happening in and around those sites.
Yep.
So it's just obviously not at the scale. So that happened in the 90s. And that 20 years really since BHP has closed has seen a significant transition in the economic and the diversity of jobs and employment in the city of Newcastle. And that is predominantly in health and professional services. So the economic mix of the employment base of people in Newcastle isn't particularly in mining and in coal. When you go up towards into the valley, that changes significantly. And that focus really does need, in terms of transitioning the economy and jobs, has to be in the Hunter Valley. And tourism will play a very significant role, given the vineyards and that offering that Cessnock and into Singleton have. It's amazing. And then obviously then you sort of shoot off to another valley and get up to the Barringtons, which is also beautiful.
Absolutely.
But when it comes to that heritage, what I'm saying is you have to embrace it, whether it's we used to make steel here and that was our life and we share that heritage and that's part of our story. We export a lot of coal from here and that's part of our story, but we're not a one-trick pony. And that's what I would say. There's a Coal River Working Party.
It's what I find really challenging though is when I meet tourists, like Novocastrians embrace the coal history and somewhat proud of it. The rest of Australia, not so much.
Yeah. I totally take your point that it's like because of all the campaigning around climate change, which 100% is absolutely important.
Yep.
Like we at the city of Newcastle, at the mouth of the Hunter River, are the first local government area in the state as of the 1st of January, so it's a couple of weeks away, will go to 100% renewable electricity supply for our power generation at council. We just opened 2 days ago our 5 megawatt solar farm at Summerhill Waste Management Centre.
That's it. So that's part of Newcastle's vision, is to be a clean, smart city.
Yeah. So 80% of the state's power production comes out of this region. So whether it's, coal or gas or whatever, the sources are, our supply is actually coming from the New England area, from the state's largest wind farm, to actually top up that supply from our solar panels on all our rooftops, as well as this 14,500 photovoltaic cells. We've built them at our Summerhill Waste Management Centre, which is a capped landfill, and underneath that capped landfill was once a coal mine.
Interesting.
So that is like the layers of history of, it is a journey and you have to work towards that journey. And I think that obviously steel making and coal are part of our journey and history, but so are, it's an amazing city in terms of creative arts as well. And it's just really important that we spend some time making sure we do focus on our world-class surfing beaches. Our beaches are amazing.
Okay, so just suppose coal is a thing of the past.
Okay, rightio. So we're dead.
Okay.
Yeah, thanks for that.
Just imagine. Just imagine for a moment that happens. And then similar story to that of Hobart, a multi-million-dollar, I think it was a gambler or something, but he had millions of dollars.
No, he's a really smart guy.
And what he did, he invested in one of the best museums in the world, being Mona.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
It was amazing. Hobart's 250,000. So basically a third or a half of the Hunter in Newcastle in that self. But yeah, what he did, he thought, I've got an idea. I'm going to build one of the most impressive museums, put on the map. Now, just suppose or imagine someone comes along, that's not Nathan Tinkler, and does the same thing, got $100 million and goes, I want to build an amazing tourist attraction in Newcastle. What would you do?
Bring it on. Bring it.
What would we build? What's an amazing new attraction that could really put Newcastle on an international stage?
What would you like to see? Would you like to see another version of Mona, Museum of Old and New Art? Is that what, because, that is 100% private money, and it's an amazing, I guess, philanthropic gesture for Hobart, and it's obviously changed the face of, what they can do around tourism there. Hobart and Newcastle have very similar histories in terms of times of settlement.
Exactly.
And also mining and coal mining.
That's right. There's a lot of ship history in Hobart,
Mm.
similar to Newcastle. Convict history,
Yes.
similar to Newcastle.
Yes.
Yeah, 100% correct. But yeah, what would be, okay, maybe not $100 million, but the icons of Newcastle, beaches, right?
Yes.
Past coal. But
Yeah.
big beaches. We've got a cathedral.
Mhm.
We've got great lookouts, but definitely the coastal walks. And I applaud you for upgrading the Bathurst Way.
Yeah.
It's getting better and better and better, because that is turning into one of Australia's best coastal walks.
Mhm.
I've done the Bondi to Bronte a few times.
Yes.
Newcastle nails it.
Yes.
I've gone to Adelaide and around Glenelg. Newcastle nails it. I've gone around the coast of Hobart, Cairns, Sydney. Like, I've really done the exploring in Australia. And every time I return, I'm like, wow, like this is something special.
Yeah.
So
we a lot of effort went into meticulous planning to try and make sure that we had one chance to get that type of infrastructure right. And obviously we're still building, because we have the whole extension at South Newcastle Beach of the Bathurst Way through there. So there's still more planned. But what might be of interest to you is actually linking that up. And there is, a plan to actually get obviously across the harbour and through Stockton, and then have a walk right up to the headlands.
so
at the
like
end
building a bridge, perhaps.
Well, we'll get across on the ferry.
Yep.
And then be able to walk all the way along the coast and through the, I guess, what is subtropical rainforest and near the dunes, all the way up to the headlands. It is mapped out as like an extension, an arm of the Great North Walk. And we've been doing some planning with Port Stephens Council around the Stockton Fern Bay area in terms of where a natural town centre site would be. Because in terms of tourism and attraction, it's not just about the city of Newcastle. The city provides, obviously that urban environment, and is a place where particularly it's important, I think, to have, we have an amazing collection at our art gallery. So I would definitely put some of the money into, and I've been on public record a lot of saying that we need to actually redevelop the art gallery. It's been an ongoing discussion, if you haven't heard, for a couple of, maybe a decade.
Not going to lie, I haven't.
Yeah. You have, So it's exceptional. Like, the collection is amazing. Like probably the best regional collections, worth about $100 million in the country. Like, very, very well-known Australian artists all have either gifted or part of an extensive collection. At the moment, about 2% of it can be displayed. So we have been toiling away for a long time looking for state and federal money to come in with us.
Excellent.
So that would definitely 100% be on our radar. Because what happens in Newcastle, unlike Sydney, and this is a challenge that we live with every day and spend a lot of time, trying to resolve, is that we're on a rate base at the city of Newcastle, but we provide the museum, art gallery.
So money's not distributed as evenly.
No, so in Sydney, the council there doesn't pay for the Art Gallery of New South Wales, or, all like a lot of the big cultural infrastructure that is actually attracts visitors and tourists is all paid for by the New South Wales government, all federally funded. In Newcastle, it's almost impossible to get the interest of state or federal funding for these very important cultural projects that actually create that narrative that you want to see, that's away from heavy industry and actually celebrates what is a city with an amazing cultural history. And so to that, I've been toiling away, and we've actually got a consortia of creatives and artists together, and we're planning a cultural festival for September next year.
Exciting.
Yeah, so that's like, I looked at the models of the Sydney Fringe and the like, and it has to be driven by local creatives and artists and local content. And, I want it to be able to, expand on This Is Not Art and some of the other really popular festivals in that space that have been going for quite some time. So for me, it's always about having a lot of strings to your bow. And that's why Surfest is fantastic, because it's a great celebration.
Festivals is a great way to really showcase a city.
And that has been very deliberate. Not only talking Newcastle up, but making sure we are having events and festivals that project, great images of Newcastle around to as many people that can see them. And that might be cultural festivals. It might be supporting the Riders Festival. Or
Supercars.
absolutely supporting the Supercars.
Yeah.
Like those images of Newcastle have changed the perception of such a significant amount of people in a couple of years. The amount of people that have come up to me and said, "Oh, I thought you just made steel. I didn't realise the city was so beautiful."
I was actually in Melbourne running a tour. I had 16 guests with me, all from the United States. And it was on television. This is not the previous one, but the one before that. And I said, "Hey, I'm from Newcastle. Flick on the TV. What's it like?" And they're like, why aren't we going there on the trip? Why isn't that part of the destination? It looks incredible. So
why is it part of the trip? I blame you for that.
Well, I've moved forward from the company, hasn't I?
What are you doing in Melbourne? Our coffee's way better.
It is. Newcastle's turning into an extremely hipster city.
Yeah, it's always been like that.
Yeah, but now it's going next level.
Yeah,
but those supercars, you hit the nail on the head. Like, it really does display it extremely well. But equally, I know there's been a lot of upset people by that as well. But how do you? Because they've actually got a Facebook page.
Oh yeah.
Have you seen that thing?
Yeah.
Oh man,
I know it's a lot, isn't it?
Actually, do you mind if we display that just real quick? We'll just have a glimpse for people at home just to see what I'm talking about. I go on there personally, just have a bit of a giggle. Because it's the reasons why they dislike it. Like, as the mayor, you got to collectively what's in the best interest of the whole city.
Exactly.
And these guys seem a minority, but I find it hard to have sympathy. I mean, they're in one of the best places in Newcastle. Place an Airbnb and make some money if you've got that. There's many alternatives.
But I know a lot of people that take those alternatives.
Yeah.
They either are really into the event and they have a lot of friends over and stay at home, or they're not super into it and they have gone, "Oh, I can actually, pay for Christmas if I, lease my, unit or house or whatever it is." So each to their own. There is impact. That is not been noted since day one of hosting this event to local residents and businesses. And what we have tried to do is mitigate that as much as possible, but you can't mitigate it completely. And even at the moment, we're actually trying to explore options to get it packed up more quickly because the date changes next year.
Sure.
So I'm really cognizant of, and it's not like we don't work around all of those pieces, okay? Yeah, it's taking too long to pack up. We want to get the amenity back as soon as we possibly can. So, our interests are all the same interests for the city. And, like some people just won't like the race and there's nothing you can do. Like there's literally nothing you could do.
If you're going to make an omelette, you're going to break some eggs.
Yes, pretty much. But there's just nothing you can do to appease if people are just 100% against it.
Oh, yeah. It's one thing that I've found, as much as I love Newcastle, there's a lot, like, it's a minority, but it's it's a loud voice.
It is. And that's sort of what I talked about at the beginning is you could do jobs like mine or be involved in, jobs like mine and try and keep everybody happy and sit on the fence and not make any decisions. But you also then the city doesn't move anywhere.
You are correct. I can relate from a smaller, because being a tour guide, I get critiqued every tour.
Yeah.
Leave me feedback. You get a mandatory review sometimes.
Yeah,
and you look at it and you're like, you did what you thought was the best for the group, and there might be that little review. Oh, that was interesting.
Yeah.
I didn't see where that come from. But yeah, you can't, no matter what you do, you cannot please everyone. It's just not perfect. But me personally, I don't like supercars. But do I like it changing and moving Newcastle forward? Yes. Like, I find races boring, but I'm all for it. I think, and I was disappointed Kiss didn't come. It attracts other things outside of the race as well.
It does. That was disappointing, but it didn't affect the crowd numbers. I thought it might affect crowd numbers more, but no, we still got really good attendance numbers. And what's happened is, from what I've noticed, from the first year now to the third year, because we want to make sure that benefit is shared as far and wide as possible. So we have, wonderful people at council that just toil away, our staff there that work on this, and dedicated to actually supporting all the local businesses. And they, are trying to work with him because the first year a lot of people were like, well, that didn't come into my business or my cafe or my shop. And it's because Newcastle hadn't really ever attracted that many people ever to an event before. So there wasn't a skill set of, what do we do? Do we change our offering for those couple of days to depending on what, you're serving?
Well, there's a lot of opportunity. Like any business owner that's somewhat entrepreneurial, got to look at this as an opportunity to adapt or change to that new customer or client.
And a lot of people after a couple of years, particularly the year just gone past, have done that. And were very successful, and they had really good feedback. And I thought, thank goodness, because you want it to be you host events like this to try and share the love. You don't host them to impact on people's lives. You host them for many different purposes, promote the city, but also try and make sure everyone that is operating, particularly in and around that precinct, is getting some sort of benefit, as well as all of the residents and people throughout the Hunter having the opportunity to attend an event of that scale and size.
Absolutely. I'd like to wrap things up because I know you're extremely busy. We're probably going slightly over time, but
I'm only due somewhere in 2 minutes. I'm not joking.
I know. So just real quick, just wrap it up. I'd like to just play a quick game.
Okay, sure.
Quick little game.
I don't think you told me about this. This is going to be fun.
I know, right?
Yeah, right. Okay. Is this where the UFC comes out? Because I'm on guard at the moment. Right.
Well, you might start swinging depending on what you say.
Yeah. You can punch in that. Oh, you can do anything. There's no rules.
There is absolutely no rules. Like there is, there is some rules. So,
right.
So in this game, I'm going to say a word or a sentence or a couple of words, and you just say the first word that pops to your mind. We've got a couple of them. You ready?
Okay, sure.
Newcastle Knights.
Andrew Johns. Oh, that's 2 words. Am I allowed to say that?
That's fine.
Okay.
First thing that pops to your mind. Could be a paragraph. Just first thing that pops to your mind. So Newcastle Knights, Andrew Johns. Pasha Bolka.
Boat or ship. Oops. I think it's a ship.
Yep. Liberal Party.
Bad.
Charlestown Square.
Lake Macquarie.
Matthew Johns.
Knights.
Cessnock.
Bob Pinson.
Ah, right.
He's the Mayor of Cessnock.
Save the Rail.
Joan Dawson.
Ah.
She's lovely.
Silverchair.
School? Like they went to Newcastle High where I went. So that just reminds me, I just think of school. Yeah.
So you actually went to school with Silverchair?
Yeah.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah, I was older than them. I organised a talent competition and they won it. But they weren't called Silverchair then. They were.
You can be credited for sending Silverchair.
I've told that story before.
Right.
Dined out on that one. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, not
the
really.
1 a.m. lockout laws.
Need to change. Oh, that was 3 words.
What do they have to change?
We made a submission to the parliamentary inquiry last year, and it was about because it's just a blanket lockout law. So Newcastle, different to 10 years ago. Yes, there was an issue 10 years ago that absolutely needed addressing. We've changed. We've moved on. And what we have proposed is that operators, so that's like small restaurants and very small bars that have no issue with any antisocial behaviour, should not have to comply to those lockout times. So unless you have a strike against you, you should be able to operate. It's all about.
Did you hear this? We're going to be partying like there's no tomorrow.
Yeah.
Oh, right.
So I grew up when there was none. So the whole thing, you guys are a fair bit younger. It's all it's not good. Not good.
Yeah, I mean, I was, long story short, I was 18, 19, 20 going out when just seen violence all the time.
Ah, right, okay.
When it got brought in.
It needed to happen.
Yeah, I was overseas for a long time and then in Brisbane for a few years. And when I returned, I thought, man, this city's changed. So I think it actually quite worked. But two more questions.
So low-impact venues, excluded from lockout. Low-impact venues. Not high-impact, not drinking barns. But
That's good to know. Yeah. Moving forward, I like that with Newcastle. 2 more. Central Coast.
Pelicans?
Nice. Planned that one. And the last one, Fanny's Nightclub.
Oh, Rolly.
What's Rolly?
He was the owner.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, I would really like to thank you for taking your time in your insanely busy schedule to have a chat on Walter's Tours with myself.
You're very welcome.
Very pleasure. And I've also got some gifts for you as well.
Oh, really?
I do. I've got you come on any of my wine tours, you and your friend. Anytime you like.
That's easy. Thank you so much.
No worries at all.
That's beautiful.
It's my pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming here.
My pleasure.
Thanks.